Yay, woohoo!
We're live.
We must be live. We were waiting for our mics to wake up. So hello, good morning. Welcome to Dreamforce, everyone. Give yourselves a round of applause for being here. Woo! Thank you for joining us. We hope that you are in the place to talk about code everyone loves, because that's what we're doing. So if not, just welcome to the session. And I am Zane Turner. I am a developer evangelist with Salesforce, and my contact information is there. And next to me is
Laura Meerkatz, developer for Salesforce.org.
And if you want our details, we will be happy to talk to you about ourselves later as well. And before we dive in, of course, is this anyone's first Dreamforce?
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. Well, get ready to see this slide a lot.
Is this anybody's first session? Hands up.
Woo! Thank you. We're honored you chose us.
Oh, this is so exciting.
So get ready to love this slide and know it well. You're going to see it a lot. It's the best slide ever. And it just reminds you that we are a publicly traded company, Salesforce, and we want you to make your purchasing decisions based on currently available technology, not all of the awesome forward-looking stuff that we will be showing you during these next 4 days. You will see a lot about where we're going. But in this session, actually, we're going to talk to you all about things you can do now. So you should be good to go. So we made a promise, just a tiny one, with the name of the session. I'm sure none of you want to write code that appeals to everyone at all. You probably want to appeal to just one or two people.
Not just appeals to, that they love.
So let's talk about what do we mean. What are we talking about when we talk about everyone loving our code? And it's because as developers, we're responsible for all the stakeholders of our apps, right? The person using it in the end, whether that's a customer or someone internal to our business, they have their needs because they need to be able to do their job. So their priorities are around what's going to make this app easier for me to use every day. We have people on our team that are building with different tools, whether their title is admin or they just are a declarative builder, also a developer. They need to be able to do their job. So they want our apps to be able to use the tools they like using. And then the other people in our orgs that write code with us, or our future selves that write code, want our code to be readable, stable, refactorable, all those things that are approachable, right? And so this is totally simple, right? No problem. We please everyone all the time. Sometimes. Because when was the last time you were able to just completely blow a deadline? Raise your hand if you never have deadlines. Exactly. So that time pressure tends to mean we use what we know because we know it works and we know how we can deliver with the thing that we already know. We don't have a lot of time to build POCs or test out new stuff, try things we're terrible at. And often we are asked to solve a lot of problems pretty quickly. Am I right? I'm seeing some heads nodding. And so that means you focus on solving those problems, especially those most urgent and immediate problems. Maybe if you're working agile, you do a thing called sprint planning and prioritization, which tends to mean you're focusing on certain problems and you don't have a lot of time to step back and see the patterns. So, Laura, we're here for a very specific reason in your life.
Yeah, but overall, we really want to talk about those patterns so that you can take this and when you're writing your code and you're in a time crunch, you already have something in your back pocket to say.
Yes.
Like, what does this look like? What can I reuse here? So this is my story time slide. I pretty much speak at Dreamforce just so I can show this slide. I'm very proud of my graphic skills here. As I said at the beginning, I'm a developer for Salesforce.org, and I actually have the best job in the world. I get to work.
I would argue about the best, but yeah, it's pretty great.
I literally just tweeted about, they just wrote up Volunteerforce, which is the employee engagement app that I work on. It just got a write-up under the app that Salesforce employees use to change the world. So, pretty cool.
How many employees use that app, Laura?
I think we're up to about 25,000 now. Yeah. So Volunteerforce is an app that we use to find volunteering activities, to make matching donations, to connect with causes that we care about, and really make a difference in our world. And one of the things that's cool about this from a technical perspective is that this is an app that's gone through a few different iterations. So we've been able to kind of revisit the same problems a few different times and learn from our mistakes and think how could I redo this again in a way that really works for more future-proofing.
Mm-hmm. So you're not having to rewrite the same things over and over and over, essentially, right?
Exactly.
So should we show them?
Let's do it. Let's show the most recent version. So this is the new version of Volunteerforce that we just launched at the end of August, and this is built in a Lightning community, which has a whole bunch of really exciting consequences as well. But the reason I'm showing you this screenshot is because we have all of these concepts that we want to talk about as developers, and to do that, we want to kind of give you a story that you can wrap your head around. So we're going to take this recommendations component. This is really exciting. This is a new feature that lets us look at what a user has volunteered for in the past, causes that they say they care about, skills that they say they have, and use that to match up their interests to potential volunteering activities.
So when I log in, this panel looks completely different than when you log in, right? Because it really is for me, and I can say that because I've logged a few things now in Volunteerforce. So when I log in, it knows where I'm located. So it's not showing me stuff in Oklahoma because I'm not in Oklahoma. And it shows me things like I volunteer with rad women. I know there's some rad women in the audience. That's just Laura. Woo! And so rad is in there as a volunteer session as well, but it has some themes. So I see similar themes. So we're taking this engine that's how do you prioritize certain data and surface it to a user when they click on the page.
Yeah, and we've taken this and we've applied it to a simplified version for the conference management app that you can find in Trailhead. So this is an app that you can build out for yourself, and you can take the code that we're going to show you here and build it on top of that. And just because I did say the magic word recommendations, this is not an Einstein-based app. We actually have a parallel project to develop that as well, which is going to be super cool. But this is an Apex-based system. So the things we're going to show you here are Apex-based options.
So just to give you the highlights, we're going to talk about 4 themes. So you can take it here. We're going to walk through each one of them. We'll show you the slide at the end, however you want it. We're also going to give you links to the code repository, and we've made a trail mix. So don't panic if you feel like you missed something or you want to know where anything is. We got you covered. So we're going to talk about these 4 themes about how you change your code without having to change your code, because that's the thing that's important. We can't give you more time. We can't take away your deadlines, but let's give you some ways to work smarter in that limited time. So Laura, you're going to take us through this. What do we mean by categorize in one place? Do you want to get us in the app?
Yeah, so before we dive into that, we're going to talk a little bit about our demo app. So here we have our session. Let's hop back to our contact. Oh,
I think we have a little bit of the PowerPoint doesn't like to share going on. So now we'll just, there we go.
Oh, it helps if you can actually see the screen.
So we can make this bigger too.
Let's embigulate. One moment, please.
So as Laura's doing that, this is our conference management app. So we can see that because we're in the Lightning selector. It says conference, and we have contacts, sessions, and speakers, and we're on a contact record right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, so if you take a look at these recommendations that we've made, and I'll try to make this a little bit bigger, and maybe that'll blow out our design, maybe it won't. But you can see that we are including some information like what level is this session, what role is this session, what topics does the session cover. And if you look at our contact over here on the left side, you can see that we have some corresponding fields that we're going to use to match up on those sessions and say which one is the best fit for Jay.
So Laura, this isn't easy though, because we're making a lot of assumptions right here, first of all, in even getting these sessions. We're hopefully going to show sessions that haven't already expired, sessions that aren't already full. How are we even doing that?
Right, so to tackle this problem, we've broken it into 2 steps, and I promise we're going to get into code really soon. And the first step is that we're looking for that pool of eligible recommendations. So before we even start thinking about what does Jay like, what does Jay want, we only really want to consider sessions that might be eligible for recommendations.
Cool.
So to do this, go into the developer console. There we are. Oh no, is it going to load? Okay, it didn't reload everything. It did. Scroll me down. So you can think if you wanted to write a query for how to get sessions that are eligible for recommendations, this is a way that you could do that. So we're looking for a session that's in the future, it's not full, it has a topic, it doesn't include the word private in the name. But first of all, I can tell you that the real version of this was about 5 times as long, and it's hard to read. And when you want to make a change to it, the fact that it's hard to read makes it ugly. Yeah. And you're going into code. So the next time someone comes to me and says, actually, we want to exclude everything that has executive track in the name as well. Now I'm going back into code.
And now we're pushing code.
Deploy process, waiting for release, all that good stuff. So this is not great.
No. I can't even read line 28. Yeah, that makes no sense.
And if I wanted to run a report about all of my sessions that are eligible for recommendation, so I could do some debugging on that, that's a non-starter here.
Okay, so how do we improve this?
So let me talk to you about a revolutionary little thing called formula fields, which I know is like the first thing that you learn the first week when you start working on Salesforce, but this is really about patterns and recognizing and here's a way you can apply this. You have something that's really a complex bit of criteria for a session. Whether or not this is something that's eligible for recommendations is a property of that session. It's just a property that's determined by other fields.
So you took the business logic out of your query and you put it in that include in recommendations _C formula field.
Right.
So now we've abstracted the how do we decide as a company whether this should be shown to a user. That's in a formula field.
Right. So now the next time I want to make that executive track change, I can make that change easily, an admin can make that change, everyone can see what's going on there.
That's awesome, except I know that formula fields are recognized at runtime. So when we get lots and lots of records, how does this perform?
Yeah, so this is not great. Neither was our first query. Both of those they're based on time. They're not going to be performant for queries. Our indexing is not going to work. So the best solution for this, and decide whether or not this is more the work than you want to do for your scenario if you're dealing with something that can handle a heavier performance load. But for our case in Volunteerforce, we include another copy of that field that is just a Boolean field that we are copying on a scheduled basis. So that then we have this formula field that's handling all the logic for us. We're using that scheduled job to copy that into a field that's more performant. And we even requested a custom index on that field, which is something that you just log a case with support. They'll walk you through the steps. We've got an article linked from the README in the repo. And what that means is that we took this query that was originally, I think, 40 seconds and got it down to under a second.
So we went from messy query to formula field to, oops, that's a little slow. So now we have that business logic that's still in a formula field so we can change it more easily. We then index it with a batch job to be a true or false value, which is what we're doing here.
Exactly. And we're not going to walk through that code here, but it is in the repo if you want to go see an example of that.
Awesome. So
let's get back to our slides.
Thank you, Laura. So the highlights of what you just saw, categorizing one place. We're using our formula fields for complex attributes. We're calculating on those records, but you're keeping an eye on the performance. And if you see a hit, then we can solve it by maybe doing a batch job. And we're talking about documenting intent because if you saw the include in recommendations, and then the other one, the batch job one, was include in recommendations stored, I know for me, if I don't see why someone made that field, my first assumption might be, did someone not read that we already have the include in recommendations field? And which one can we get rid of tomorrow? And it looks like cruft instead of something useful in your org. So as you saw in the comments that Laura was showing us, and also you'll see in the repo, we're talking about why we're including all of those things.
So there we talked about one way that we can change how our code is running without ever touching code.
All right, so the next thing, we're talking about sharing. Laura, I don't always like sharing.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be hard sometimes, but you know what? Sometimes when you share with someone else, they'll share back with you. It's good.
I'll see it when I believe it. All right, so what do we mean by sharing control of our variables? Can you take us in and show us that?
Yeah, so now we're ready to get into the scoring algorithm for our recommendations. So this is the part where we say...
I need to get out of presentation.
Oh, God, I'm going to forget
PowerPoint
that
doesn't like to share.
every single time. So, cancel. Yeah.
All right.
Better. Okay, so now we're going to go through the part. We have our pool of recommendations, and we're going to go back to, we want to take those recommendations, and we want to calculate these little scores that we're seeing that say, this one is a better fit for Jay, so that goes first.
Right, 130 versus 55 down there on the Commodore 64 session.
Yeah, you might even have a threshold for just cutting that one off, although who doesn't want to see new life for a Commodore 64? Anyway. So you can think about what this would look like to write this as an algorithm, and I'm not even going to show you the ugly version, but just do a little thought exercise and be like, okay, so I could say if the topic matches, I'm going to add 5, and if the role matches, I'm going to add 10, and if the level matches, I'm going to add 15. And First of all, like, again, that's just ugly to look at.
Yep.
You don't want to deal with that.
30 lines of if-else.
30
my
lines of
favorite.
if-else.
Yeah.
And when we're learning as we do this, we don't actually know what makes for a perfect recommendation for a volunteering activity, or what do we know for our sessions.
Again, business logic that might change.
Exactly. So we want to future-proof this. We really want to make this something that we can keep control of outside of our code, and that we can make changes to in the future. So to do that, we have a custom setting that when you start looking at this, it kind of starts to explain itself. We have a bunch of different factors that we're weighing in. We have different scores for each one of those things. And when we come back in here and decide that actually we found out that level is way more important to a user's satisfaction with a certain session, we can save this, we can go rerun our recommendations. I can't remember if I actually changed the right thing to see if this will change, so drum roll. We'll at least see that the score changed, okay. Yeah, now that Commodore 64 is up to number 2.
So we're changing the intelligence of our business logic here in a way that's declarative. So you gave away control of what would have been a back-end algorithm, our back-end variable, by using a custom setting, or custom metadata often fills the same space. What about front-end?
Yeah, exactly. For front end, you can do something similar, but with design attributes, which I hope that this is all old news from last year, but if you haven't seen these yet, this little use location box is checkbox is on our recommendations component, and an admin can come in here and check this box, and it's going to change. You'll see a tiny, tiny little distance in there if you're squinting very closely. And that determines whether or not we're even using location as a factor in our recommendations. So the design attributes, all you have to do is go into the design file in your Lightning component, set a couple of basic properties on there, and then that's going to expose whatever you have as attributes in your Lightning component to your admin so that they can make changes that you can use in your code.
Mm-hmm. So we can change how this behaves on the page with design attributes, and we can change the logic behind it with custom settings, custom metadata.
Exactly.
That's pretty powerful.
All right.
So this might sound like we're building up to a takeaway, and you would be correct that we are. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
Okay, sharing with me. Don't code what you know will change. That's the hard part, right? We know that we sometimes have to do it, but that nice long algorithm, or hey, we could make this a utility class, that sounds like a great idea. It's not, because it's going to change, and then you're pushing code. So custom settings, custom metadata help you let the back end be flexible. Design attributes help you let the runtime, the how is it going to be on the page, be flexible. There's some resources that we can share with you that are in the mix about how you can even make something behave on a different object at runtime, which leads us to the next thing.
Whoa, you're getting way ahead of yourself.
I know.
You're giving away all my secrets.
So Laura, I feel like, so when we were working on this session, I was like, this is an awesome subtitle, unlock the power of object-oriented programming. But if people knew what that meant, they'd already be doing it.
Right, so.
Yes, thank you. Okay, good. So let's see what that means.
Exactly, so this is something that, before I go into this, if I have any Java developers in the room, yes, I am talking about Java 101 here. This is very basic stuff. But I know a lot of Apex developers don't come from that background.
Nope.
So they haven't grown up in this world, and when you start thinking in this way, it actually completely changes the way you write code. So we're gonna dive into something that's super simple, okay, not super simple, somewhat simple and powerful. Thank you for making that switch for me. It's just gonna make all of this easier. So one of the things that we wanted to do for our recommendations is include sorry, we're not looking at this right now, is include distance as a factor.
That little checkbox we saw that popped up distance and had a number, that's how we're doing that.
Yeah, so to do that, we need to have some geolocation data on each of our records. We need to know where our session is, where our attendee is, so that we can compare those two things. And I already skipped into the ugly part of this, which is so to do this, we need to set up a geocoding service. To set up our geocoding service, we're solving a generic problem, but we have to use a specific service along the way. So we started this with the OpenCage API, which is an API that you can call that'll give you the information. You could use the Google Maps API, you could use here.com. There are any number of services in the world that will do this for you. Or in this case, you can use our super dead simple demo implementation.
So that's that endpoint she's talking about, HTTP demo.
Yep.
Sounds like a real website, right? Yeah.
Because when I was working on this demo and thinking, man, I'd really love to show everybody how this works with here.com, I thought, I also don't want to show my API key on video in front of hundreds of people.
Da-da-da-da.
Yeah, so how are we doing this? Well, one of the tricks here is that if you do this the right way, you can set it up so that all of the code that asks for geocoding data calls one place.
That sounds great.
Right, and then you can use whichever service you want based on that call. So I've got, back on our contact page, you see I've got this geocoding button, and that's just calling a Visualforce page, and
So we're going to walk you through the pattern of proving what you just said, and we're going to swap out one service for another.
oh, you want to see me actually do it?
No, I just want you to show us. Just walk us through.
Well, I'll just show you what it would look like. So this is our geocode records method. This is never going to change. When I change my service, this method call is going to be exactly the same.
So here we're defining, when you say this is never going to change, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, I'm seeing some steps.
Right
so I'm seeing a pattern here, right? You basically...
A pattern? You don't say.
Right? It's like if I instead am not solving the geocoding problem, I'm going to think about a use case from my background, like payments, right? When we need to accept payments from someone, we need to know what the payment is. We need to know how much we're charging them. We need to call the payment service and then show the response.
Yep.
Those are the steps. Doesn't matter if we're using authorize.net or Square or whatever. The cash register in the front, still, that's the pattern of payment. So is this what we're looking at here is the beginning of the geocode pattern?
Yeah, so it's almost like you have a certain set of things that you know that anything that counts as a payment processor will be able to do. Or in this case, anything that counts as a geocoder will be able to do. And so we define those things that our geocoder can do in an interface, which looks a whole lot like a class. But all it is a list of method names, and we're just going to say anytime you want to create a new geocoder, that's great, but you have to tell me how to do these three things.
Who's used interfaces in their Apex code before? Okay, some. So lots of new territory here.
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of writing one specific, the here.com amazing geocode Apex class, that then when we stop working with here.com, I have to blow it away.
Right. Instead, we're going to go ahead and set up this interface, set up our code to call a generic geocoder class that then will say, which geocoder do you want me to use? Take a look at that custom setting, take a look at the class name that's in that custom setting, figure out if that class qualifies as a geocoder, and if so, proceed to do all of these things with it. So then we can take a look at our demo geocoder, you can see, those same methods that we had defined in our interface, the ones that we're implementing here. We can just go ahead and give a service name, tell it whether or not supports batch. And here's the really fun part. Normally in our geocode addresses method, this is where you'd be taking in an address and making a call out to a service to get real data. Or in this case, you can just tell it that the Latin long is always
Our
those
service
numbers.
never fails.
Never fails. Performance on this is amazing.
We only serve one place, but it's always there. So if we wanted to move away from then demo, you're saying now we could move to say that next tab you have open helpfully right there? Is that it?
Actually, that's the next part of our demo.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So should we go to the takeaways then?
Yeah, let's go to the takeaways.
We've rehearsed this, I promise. No. So what you just walked us through, Laura, is the fact that because you watched for the pattern of the geocoding, you then, instead of writing that directly in the code, you defined that interface. That then meant you were giving a resource for future classes. When you wanted to write the here.com, you knew you needed to support these three methods. This is how I go call the service, this is how I deal with the geocoding response, and this is where I want to put it in the application.
Yeah, and once you have that implementation in your back pocket, that means you can just swap out that custom setting and you don't make any change to your code. All of a sudden you were using your demo service a minute ago, now you're using here.com. You haven't changed anything in your code, but you're able to swap those things out just using custom settings.
And avoiding then a dependency of when here.com changes their prices and we can't use them anymore, now we have to rewrite everything because we've made it more flexible. Again, using that pattern we talked about before of giving away some of the back-end variable control in that custom setting or custom metadata.
Right. Which, by the way, is anyone here developing managed packages? Okay, so this is a super powerful pattern for you as well, because this is the way that you can leave parts of your implementation flexible so that your customers can make changes. So if you want to say that I'm going to provide a payment processor for you, and we'll give you one option out of the box, but you know that some of your customers use a different payment processor, then you give them this interface, they can implement it for themselves, and you can leave some of those decisions up to them.
Yeah. So the last one that we're talking about is really the heart of what you started with. Don't solve the same problem twice. You said you revisited this app a lot. So what do we mean by not solving the same problem twice, Laura?
Right, so in this case, we're talking about solving the same problem across S objects, and this is where I'm just gonna show you a magic trick. And we hope it works because demoing live is always fun. But we have our geocoding already set up for our contact. And now we want to set up geocoding for sessions. So if I take a look at one of our sessions.
What a great sounding session.
It's an amazing session.
Yeah.
It's really upsetting that there are no attendees enrolled. But you can see there's nothing up my sleeve, no geocode button. I will say the one thing that I did ahead of time was create just the fields that contain the data. So I'm not going to make you sit through the entire part of me clicking new text field, go. But we're going to go ahead and create a new geocoding button on session, and then we're going to be able to geocode. So to do this, first we have to go into our field map, which is another custom setting, and we're going to tell our code where on session do address and geocoding fields live. So
because when we look at, say, an object like account, we know that we have billing and mailing address fields, those compound fields, but sessions is a custom object, so those are going to be custom fields. So already we're going to see the API names are different. So this is helping the system know that on the session record, our city field is city_C, whereas on the account it would be billing city or mailing city, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have our map, so we know where our data lives. Now I'm just going to go into the contact in setup and steal the
Developers never
URL
copy paste.
for
This is an anti-pattern right here. Just close your eyes.
So then we'll go into our session objects. Going to create a new button. Call it geocode. I love the silence in the room. Everyone is really waiting in anticipation here.
Yeah.
And we're just going to switch out, instead of a contact ID, we're going to send it a session ID. So we'll save that. And of course, you get the message saying we have to add it to our layout before we can see it. So we'll do that really quick. Go into our page layouts.
And so all of this is going to be in that repo again. So you're going to see the pattern behind this.
Lightning actions. Geocode. I also, let's hope I typed all that right, because I did all this on my laptop before where it was auto-completing. Okay, so now, I kind of seriously want a drum roll on this one. Like, I don't know if this is going to work. We'll find out, but.
Live demo.
Live demo. We're going to hit geocode.
Living and dying by the code that we promise. You don't have to change.
Wait for it to.
Right?
Come on, Paige, you can do it. Is it there? Is it there? Do I have to hit refresh? Sometimes I have to hit refresh.
We didn't turn off session caching, so just FYI, make sure in Lightning you're doing that in your developer orgs.
Yeah!
So you took a solution that you built originally for one object and applied it to a completely different object.
Right. Because when we're working on this, you're thinking, wow, is my end goal really just to geocode volunteer activities, or in this case, sessions? No, I want to be able to probably geocode any
all the
custom
things.
object in my system. Like, why not? Once I have that capability, I want to be able to use it everywhere.
So, and if you want to take us back in the slidey slides. So, but don't solve the same problem twice. It's, again, this idea of.
I want to show the code.
Oh, yeah, you do want to show the code.
I mean, again, this is, if you've seen Dynamic Apex before,
Yes,
this is nothing revolutionary. This is what we're talking about here. But you can see in the comment here, essentially what we're doing is by using that custom setting to track our field map, we're able to define in a dynamic way, this is what we mean by street field in this case.
Yes.
So for contact, that street field is mailing street, but for session, it's street under C, and we don't have to have a hard-coded reference to our field in our code, which means that we can reapply the same solution over and over again using that custom setting.
Awesome. So when we're talking about don't solve the same problem twice, we're talking about the ability to watch for patterns. Again, we keep thinking that that's important, but the fact that you built the ability to put a location on a record, that's probably going to come up in your business again. The fact that you built the ability to take a payment, that might be useful again. Those things that you're like, oh, we do this all the time in our business, then you should also be thinking about being object agnostic. And that's really where we start to get into the realm of dynamic apex, that apex that doesn't care what object it's dealing with, because it can deal with any of them.
Yeah, so to recap, we just made actually if you count the design variables, 4.5 big changes to how our code operates. And we didn't touch our underlying code at all.
Does that seem useful? Slightly? So categorizing in one place, that complexity of business logic, taking it out of your code, using a formula field if you need. Also, we saw same pattern between sharing control of variables and unlocking the power of object-oriented programming, of letting things like custom metadata or custom settings help you set those back-end algorithms. Instead of coding complex business logic, put it somewhere declarative so that we can change it more quickly. And also help yourself by not solving the same problem twice, by realizing those patterns of, am I building this right now because we need to pay this one service, but tomorrow I'm going to be building the same service again. And so these are your resources. As promised, we have a GitHub repo right here. The bit.ly link of code everyone loves will take you there. Laura put in a ton of work into making the beautiful README that basically recreates what we did here. And we have a trail mix, the mix everyone loves that I may evolve this week as I decide what else we need to put in it. But all of these resources are here for you. And we hope that you will get hands-on. And thank you for starting your Dreamforce with us. We really appreciate you being here. And there is a mic for questions. So if anyone has questions, we have time.
And as you're coming up for sessions, please do use the microphone so that we get all of that on the recording.
We're recording, so people want to hear your questions.
As people are coming up, if you like the session and you had any friends who didn't get a chance to come in, we are doing a repeat of this on Thursday. So you can let people know to look for that in the agenda builder if this is something you want to share with them.
Cool. Thanks.